What does it say?
Look, he attracted a lot of people. And some of the people that he attracted, like, that have those views, I completely and totally disagree with. And he has been quite clear about his views on these issues. And he has led the party away from those views. And that's frankly one of the reasons they're not in it anymore.
He spoke on the phone with Tucker Carlson about 6 weeks ago.
What did he say? What did he say about him last week?
But why? I mean, look, you're arguing to me that they are repulsive people who are anti-Semitic. The president of the United States is on the phone with them.
He disavowed them last week.
I'm just saying.
Abby Phillip directly challenges Scott Jennings and pushes him to openly call out Donald Trump's comments live on CNN, while Scott attempts to brush it off. But as familiar figures like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Candace Owens begin to create distance from Trump, it raises a clear question about what has changed. And this is exactly where Abby's point becomes powerful, because it is not just about people shifting their stance, but about whether they can still be trusted. Since when the same voices that were strongly backing bold and controversial claims just a short time ago suddenly start changing their tone, voters are unlikely to accept it so easily. So let's break down how Abby Phillip confidently takes on Scott Jennings during Newsnight with Abby Phillip.
Tonight, Ilhan Omar is applauding MAGA stars Candace Owens and Marjorie Taylor Greene for breaking with Donald Trump and expressing their buyer's remorse.
The thing that has been very fascinating, especially about Marjorie and Candace, is that they are not just coming out like the other ones that you'd mentioned, where they're saying this action is wrong, right? They're saying, I am done with you. We should give them credit for that.
So if somebody is ready to take that step and at least talk to us and maybe do something differently, the message cannot be, I told you so. The message has to be, welcome aboard. What else can we do together?
Ilhan Omar is saying, give them credit. Pete Buttigieg is saying, let's hold hands and say, what can we do together? Do you think that's the right move?
So look, I have to address something first, which is that when I was, I've had a personal interaction with Marjorie Taylor Greene. When I was 18 after the shooting at my high school, when I was lobbying members of Congress, my fellow activists in March for Our Lives, Marjorie Taylor Greene, before she was a member, started chasing me around saying that the shooting at my high school didn't happen, that I was a crisis actor, that I was paid by the government to do all these just horrible things that are completely false. And at the same time, what those conversations that they're talking about remind me of is my own evolution as an activist. In terms of when I was in college, I didn't go to college to just be surrounded by a bunch of liberals necessarily. I know that's hard for you guys to believe, but it's true. That's why I joined the shooting club when I was in college. And as you can imagine, Scott, I was not very popular there. But it's important to talk to people who disagree with us, because ultimately, even though we're Democrats and Republicans, we have to find what little overlap there is that we can move forward on. And look, we can speculate all we want on her intentions and why she's doing this ultimately. But from my perspective, I'm willing to take that first step and have that conversation with her. And I would challenge her to this too. If she wants to come on your show and talk to me directly about why she's changed her mind, I'm happy to do that and have that conversation. And I would challenge her to do that and prove to us why she actually is authentic and changing, and that this is not just another opportunistic political opportunity like it was when she chased me after the shooting at my high school. But I'm willing to give her a small chance to have that conversation. But it's important to note too, this is not just a Marjorie Taylor Greene phenomenon. Yeah. We're seeing Tucker Carlson. We're seeing people across the board defect increasingly from Trump.
Okay. What do all those people have in? What do all those people have in common, by the way?
Trump.
What is it they all have in common?
Ago and now he doesn't.
When I hear Ilhan Omar, you know what I hear? How do you do, fellow anti-Semites? That's what I hear.
Yeah, that's about Israel.
This is about. There is a thread here, and it's so transparently obvious. And I'll be honest. I think what she did to you is abhorrent. She was a clown then. She's a clown now. This entire thing for her is political. Trump didn't want to back her in a statewide race in Georgia, and she's a conspiracy theorist then, and she's a conspiracy theorist now. And I would caution you. I would caution you.
This is one of those situations where you can disagree with someone's past and still see that something larger may be unfolding. Because what really stands out is not just a few individuals suddenly adjusting their tone, but a clear pattern forming, with voices across the right, from media figures to elected officials, beginning to create distance from Donald Trump at roughly the same time. And history suggests that this kind of movement usually signals a deeper shift beneath the surface. Since we have seen in earlier political cycles that toward the later stages of a movement, insiders are often the first to step back when the cost of loyalty starts to outweigh the benefits. And there is data that supports this trend, as recent polling shows a gradual drop in support for Trump among independents and even some Republicans, especially on issues like foreign policy and leadership style, which matters because when public opinion begins to change, political figures tend to react to it rather than shape it. And at the same time, the idea of staying open to dialogue is not as unrealistic as it is sometimes portrayed. Because if you look at key bipartisan moments in U.S. history, such as civil rights laws and criminal justice reform, progress only happened when people with strong disagreements still sat down and found some shared ground. Which does not mean overlooking past actions, but does mean testing whether anything has truly changed. And that is the core issue here. Since being skeptical is reasonable, but completely closing the door does not move anything forward. Because when someone shifts their position, the only way to know if it is genuine is to challenge them directly and see if they remain consistent over time. So while the past should not be forgotten, it also should not stop you from recognizing when the foundation of a political movement appears to be shifting.
I don't think Joe Rogan's an anti-Semite. I don't think Andrew Schultz is an anti-Semite. I don't think Eric Erickson is an anti-Semite.
No.
I think there's a lot of people around the country whose names we don't know who were
We're
very
talking about
supportive
Marjorie
of
Taylor Greene,
Tucker
Carlson.
You're saying other people.
But just one second.
What do all of them have in common?
Even if you say that the only thing that is important about those three individuals in particular is that they're anti-Semitic, what does it say about the president that he was totally fine with them 6 months ago?
Well, and they were totally fine with him.
What does it say?
Look, he attracted a lot of people. And some of the people that he attracted, like, that have those views, I completely and totally disagree with. And he has been quite clear about his views on these issues. And he has led the party away from those views. And that's frankly one of the reasons they're not in it anymore.
He spoke on the phone with Tucker Carlson about 6 weeks ago.
What did he say? What did he say about him last week?
But why? I mean, look, you're arguing to me that they are repulsive people who are anti-Semitic. The president of the United States is on the phone with them, and
he disavowed them last week.
I'm just saying.
That's the people, Abby, that you're talking about.
But let's go back to what David said, because I think it's important. I mean, is there a way to work with a Marjorie Taylor Greene, or I mean, Candace Owens? Candace Owens, really? Is that really what Democrats are going to be doing?
Marjorie Taylor Greene, Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, and others are responsible for creating the personality that we are dealing with in the White House today and all of the issues that come along. I believe the best indicator of future performance is to look at past performance. Marjorie Taylor Greene hasn't had any great Jesus moment. We've been talking a lot about him. Let me bring him to the table. She hasn't had some great Jesus moment. This is all about her. What attention would Marjorie Taylor Greene be getting today if she had not turned so fully against the president? I'm not a believer. Now, for Ilhan Omar, thank you. I believe she has the best intentions, but I'm not ready to turn my back and invite Marjorie Taylor Greene to any table that I'm seated at.
Let's remember what the issue was that drove a wedge between Donald Trump and some of his biggest supportive Republican women, like Nancy Mace, like Lauren Boebert, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and it was the Epstein files.
One point that strengthens Abby and Val's side is the clear pattern that has developed over the past few years, because figures like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson did not just rise by chance. They were pushed forward, given a platform, and often backed when it was politically useful. And that matters, since movements do not attract voices like that randomly, but actively make space for them. And the sudden distance we are seeing now is not happening on its own, as pressure has been building from different directions, including legal troubles, shifting polls, and renewed attention on controversies like the Jeffrey Epstein files returning to public discussion. And when stories like that come back into focus, they often shake alliances, especially when different groups start worrying about how it reflects on them. And there is also a credibility issue that is hard to ignore, because research on misinformation, including work from Pew Research Center, shows that repeated exposure to conspiracy-style narratives can gradually change how people understand facts. So when someone who once pushed that kind of messaging suddenly shifts position, it is not only about what they are saying now, but also about the effect they have already had. And politically, history suggests caution, since movements built around strong personal loyalty often begin to fracture in this way, as seen near the end of the Bush era and during changes in the Tea Party movement. And similar signs are appearing again now, where those closest to the core are often the first to turn on each other when things become unstable. And while people can change, there is a difference between real growth and simple repositioning, which is why before talking about working together, it is fair to question whether the same patterns, messaging, and incentives are still sitting just beneath the surface.
And as much as I disagree with them, some of them are still in Congress on so many things. I do give them credit for not having bent the knee when he brought Lauren Boebert into the Situation Room and tried to bully her into not voting for the release of the files. Now, what I would say to Ilhan Omar, what I would say to Pete Buttigieg, as somebody who broke with my party in 2015, the minute the guy came down the escalator and started talking about Mexicans and immigrants, is that it is hard. Pete Buttigieg is right. When you've been part of a party your entire life, when your circles, your social circles, your family circles, your professional circles are made up in that party, it is very hard to make that break. But I don't think Democrats have to say, come in, the water is warm, because it is a personal decision. It is not one that is led by people being your cheerleaders. You do it because you feel uncomfortable with the guy who's leading the party, not because you have a cheering section telling you to jump into the pool.
And just quickly, I mean, the polling suggests that there is erosion, despite the, whatever the MAGA number that Trump likes to tout. White non-college educated graduates, that's Trump's base, 63% supported him in 2025, February of last year. 49% support him now in April 2026.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, the way that this war has been conducted is not universally popular among every single MAGA voter, among every single Republican. But since the topic is adopting the kooks that defected from MAGA and now are considering the Democratic Party, I just would warn the Democratic Party because, to Scott's point, I mean, these are conspiracy theorists who believe that there's a Jewish cabal controlling the country, pulling the puppet strings, and that are going to destroy America. So if that's the unholy alliance that
these
a lot of
folks were campaigning with Trump and for Trump all over the country.
They have not changed.
They were the poster child for
the same people.
Conspiracy theorists.
There's also, I mean, we didn't even mention Megyn Kelly. I mean, but again, the day before the 2024 election, she was in a closing argument campaign rally with President Trump. I mean, the idea that suddenly they're kooks and the Republican Party is happy to be rid of them is
Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene barnstormed the country on behalf of Donald Trump.
And it really also kicked off after the Epstein files, to your point.
What Anas Hyde is pointing out, and what the data also supports, is that these changes are not happening by chance, because support for Donald Trump among key groups has been slipping. And even among white voters without a college degree, often seen as his strongest base, there are clear declines compared to earlier numbers. And that kind of shift usually signals that something deeper is changing, whether it is policy choices, voter fatigue, or people simply rethinking their position. And when you step back and look at the broader pattern, it starts to make sense. Since political movements built around strong personalities often stay united until they suddenly begin to crack. And once those cracks appear, the most vocal supporters are often the first to create distance, something that has played out in past political cycles as well, where late-stage shifts lead allies to rebrand when the future becomes uncertain. And there is also a credibility issue that does not fade quickly, because many of these same figures previously pushed narratives that went far beyond normal political disagreement. And research from places like Pew Research Center shows that repeated exposure to such claims can shape how people understand reality over time. So when those same voices suddenly change direction, it is reasonable for people to question whether anything truly changed, or if it is simply repositioning. And from a political standpoint, bringing people into the fold is not the same as endorsing everything they have said or done before, since parties have to think long-term about the kind of coalition they are building, and whether it is grounded in shared values or short-term advantage. So while individuals can choose to step away from a movement, expecting everyone else to treat it as a full reset is where many people, including those on Honest Hyde's side, are likely to hesitate.